Welcome to another edition of Green is Good. This happens to be the Wharton iGel GE Water Technology edition of Green is Good. We're here in beautiful downtown San Francisco today, and we're so honored and lucky to have with us today Thomas Stanley. He's the Chief Technology Officer of GE Water. Welcome to Green is Good, Tom.
John, thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Well, Tom, you know, today is a very important day here in downtown San Francisco. We're going to be talking about water and technology. Who better than you to lead off our show talking about water and technology? First of all, how did you become the Chief Technology Officer, Tom? What was the journey leading up to that position? Was this something you always dreamed about as a kid? Was sustainability big in your household? Or was this something that was learned along the way and really interested you?
You know, it's a fascinating story, actually. I'm a 30-year career GE person, scientist, engineer. I've always been in R&D, but most of my career was either with our corporate research organization or with our materials business, plastics and silicones. And I remember I was with plastics in 2001 when GE made the first acquisition that ultimately became GE Water and Process Technologies. And I remember thinking, if that job ever opens up, that would be a great opportunity. What a great space, and what an opportunity to do something really constructive and useful and important for the world and society. So, move forward a few years, GE sold the plastics division, and I went with it. And a couple years later, I said, I would love for an opportunity to get back to GE, and the water CTO role opened up. And here I am. So it was a bit of a dream come true.
Wow, that is awesome. And how many years ago was that?
That was just about 4 years ago.
4 years ago. And where's your office out of?
Now, we're in Trevose, Pennsylvania, which is in between Philadelphia and Allentown.
Interesting. And for our listeners out there and our viewers to learn more about what Tom does at GE, at the iconic and amazing brand GE, you can learn more about everything about GE and water at www.gewater.com. Tom, your office is in Pennsylvania. Today we're in California. There's been probably no greater time than right now to be talking about water and technology. We're a couple miles from Silicon Valley. We're here in California, where it is one of the driest states in the nation, probably. Talk a little bit about the importance of today and what you're going to be sharing with the audience in a little while.
Yeah. Well, John, a big focus of the discussion over the course of the day is about water reuse. Taking water that comes from wastewater treatment plant, and instead of discharging it, and especially discharging it into the ocean where it becomes seawater, we ought to be able to use that. And the technology is available today to be able to take that water with relatively modest cost to be able to upgrade it as is necessary and to use it again. So it's a great opportunity for us to extend and use more effectively the water resources that are available to us.
When you say reuse, is that really, can that another term be called even recycling of water?
Yeah, I think those two terms are used fairly interchangeably.
Are we behind the times in the United States in deploying technology that already exists, that companies like yours, GE, has already invented and also manages and installs compared to other countries around the world?
Our team is distributed around the world, so I have an opportunity to travel quite extensively. We have a lab in Singapore. We have a lab in China and India. And I think Singapore is sort of a shining star in terms of having a very coordinated water policy and very effectively using the water resources that are available to them. So it's interesting to see both the government, municipal interactions there and the focus on water, as well as the population and their awareness of water and focus on being very efficient in their use of water.
Are you saying that's a paradigm that if we followed it here in California and across the United States, we could potentially solve our water crisis and our drought issues?
I think so. We have to.
Right.
We have to. And it's not. There's not one answer. And so recycling water from wastewater treatment plants is one knob to improve our water balance and make sure that we have all the water we need. There's infrastructure improvements. People have to be more effective in using water. One thing I noticed recently when I was visiting relatives in California is this shift from irrigated lawns, watered lawns, to going to more natural stone and succulents and things like that. That's another opportunity for us to use less water. So I think all these things are going to come together and build a future that's more water resilient.
So when you say reuse and recycling of water, does that include gray water and also black water?
Sure. Yeah, it's possible to do all of those things or both of those things.
Is it a political and issue, more getting people politically motivated? Is it an economic issue? Or is it a social issue in terms of getting people over the mindset that one day they could be reusing gray or black water and it's absolutely acceptable because the technology is good enough that when you recycle that water, when you reuse that water, it's absolutely beautiful and clean?
Yeah, I think the emotional hurdle is with black water and this idea of toilet to tap that people struggle with. The reality is we do that today. Upstream, a municipality withdraws water, they treat it for drinking water, they discharge their effluent from the wastewater treatment plant, and then downstream, the next municipality takes that water in.
Really?
So, I mean, the reality is it happens today. We just don't do it directly. And I think the emotional hurdle is if we do that on purpose, can people get used to doing that? Now, we talked a little bit about Singapore before.
Yeah.
Singapore has an initiative they call New Water, where they take the wastewater treatment plant, the wastewater effluent, they upgrade the quality and make it absolutely pristine. And when you go to Singapore and you visit the wastewater treatment plant, you get a bottle called New Water that's right out of that recycle process, and you can give it a taste. And
so they really help market it and help people understand it by doing that by making that connection.
Yes, exactly.
That's so interesting. Let's talk a little bit about GE. What we love to talk about on this show is solutions and hope. GE has technologies that, if appropriately deployed by our municipalities and our government structures across the United States, both private and public partnerships coming together with GE, we can solve our water issues here in this country.
Yeah, no question about it. No question about it.
What a hopeful message. I want to share a little funny anecdote. About 6 months ago, before this issue reached the proportions in terms of the media height that it is right now, I was flipping channels late at night, and Jimmy Fallon came on, and Bill Gates happened to be on. And it was the edition where he brought on different bottles of water, one labeled poop water, and one...
That would be Jimmy Fallon, huh?
right, and one labeled regular water. And Bill Gates was trying to see if he could get Jimmy Fallon to drink the poop water from his technology that he was trying to bring to Africa, similar to the technology that GE has, I assume. It was a very funny episode, obviously, because he eventually tricked Jimmy Fallon into drinking something that he never thought he would drink. Right. But is that kind of messaging and someone who is considered such an industry titan like Bill Gates, and also a philanthropist and thought leader, is that good for the movement of water? Him out on Jimmy Fallon talking about poop water? And is this really our future? As we get more used to this idea, water recycling and reuse will become the norm, and we won't 20 years from now, 10 years from now, hopefully, be living in such drought-stricken times?
I think maybe I wouldn't use the term poop water, but I think to have Bill Gates and people like Bill Gates out there talking about this issue, creating visibility, showing that there are options available I think it's great. I think it's very, very helpful. But I should say also that the connection of taking black water, treating it, and going directly to potable water. There's a lot of things that we can do in the interim before that. Recycle is not exclusively taking the wastewater effluent and going to drinking water, but there's a number of other applications. It can be used for irrigation, for example. It's used very, very frequently for irrigation, and with a relatively modest amount of treatment, wastewater treatment effluent can be used for those sorts of applications, or industrial applications. Lots of times, industrial facilities will use recycled municipal wastewater to use as the makeup for their cooling towers and other industrial applications. So there's a host of applications that one can use with recycled water, all of which help with the net consumption of fresh water.
Besides Singapore, here in the United States, which area in the United States is deploying GE technology to help solve the water crisis the best right now in terms of holding them up as a great example?
I think probably California, simply because of the recent pressures in this area. But the statistics, as my policy friends tell me, is that in the United States we recycle today something like 3 to 4% of our water. So it's a relatively modest amount. In California, it's maybe 6, 7, 8%. So it's more, but there's still a tremendous opportunity for us to do more.
How big is the opportunity? What's your goal at GE? When you say, wow, we're getting it done, we're getting the vision executed, how much of our water should be reusing and recycling?
Well, in an arid region where there's a need to do that, I think it's not unreasonable to think about 80+%.
Really?
Yeah, and that, Israel is 85% recycle. I think Singapore, as we've talked about before, they're in that same neighborhood. So it's certainly not unreasonable to think about a very high percentage of wastewater treatment plant
effluent. So with more messaging by great leaders like you, and more technology being deployed now, there's a lot of hope in the future against the drought and the issue of the shortages of water here in the United States and around the world.
Yep, absolutely. And again, the recycle is one component. Infrastructure improvements, behaviors in terms of how much water we use, all those things need to come together, but I'm very positive.
Is what you see, because you have such great visibility on this issue and have so many interesting relationships around the United States and around the world, are governments open to this, what you're talking about now? Are municipalities and government infrastructure open to what you're talking about in terms of solving this crisis and important issue?
I think more and more. In fact, I've had conversations with some of the folks who are attending our meeting today, and that's the message that you hear, is that the need is so tremendous that in the past, where there might have been a misalignment of priorities or measurements between different constituencies that need to cooperate to put a recycle project in place, increasingly those interests are aligned. And so it's becoming easier for in some cases, fragmented agencies that have to participate in a recycle project. It's getting much easier to do that, which is great.
That's great. I'll leave any final words for you, for our audience, and before we have to say goodbye, but I'd love you to share any final thoughts on this critical topic of water and technology.
John, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and speak with your audience. I think this is a very important topic. It's a critical topic in California, so it's very timely that our meeting is here. But I think increasingly it's going to be a topic of importance across our country. And I think it's important for people to pay attention to and participate and help us all work together to make sure that we have all the water we need in the future. Well,
thank you, Tom. Thank you for your time today. And for our viewers and listeners out there, again, to learn more about Tom's great work as the Chief Technology of GE Water, please go to www.gewater.com. This is the Wharton iGel GE Green is Good special edition here in California, talking about water and technology and all the solutions. And GE has the solutions. There's lots of hope out there. Thank you for being with us today. Until our next episode, I'm John Shigarian with Tom Stanley. We'll see you soon.